Podcast time, baby. Featuring the caffeinated Kyle Elliott. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Mike Tech Studios podcast. We have been touching on topics, as you've heard in the past couple of weeks, about candidates and staffing. Today, a gentleman out on the West Coast here by the name of Kyle Elliott. He has a website, caffeinatedkyle.com. Kyle, how's it going?
Good. I just got back from meeting with a client actually at Starbucks.
Kyle, I've been looking over your work, man. I'm really impressed. You got an MPA from the Daniel J. Evans School of Public Policy and Governance at University of Washington, BS in Health Education from San Fran State University. Tell me, man, what made you want to get into the recruiting field in the first place?
I do career coaching, so I always like to make that distinction. I work with a lot of recruiters and I help candidates partner with recruiters and reach out to them to show how they're the best candidate possible for positions. This knack for helping people find jobs, solidify their careers, really has been really spurred from this desire to help people. I've always had a passion for helping people, and it started a while back. I first went to San Francisco State to do nursing, and then I ended up switching to health education. In my master's, I wanted to do healthcare administration, and I always had this desire to help people. And throughout that time, I've also always worked. I started working when I was 12, then year-round when I was 14, and then since 16, I've been working full-time. So for almost a decade, I've been working along with helping people. And I realized over time I could really marry these two items, the helping people and being really good at finding jobs and finding awesome jobs for how old I was. So over time, I married these two and I created caffeinatedkyle.com. So through that, I'm able to help people do the whole career thing that I'm really good at. So that's kind of how I got into this space.
That's really impressive. My question is, just out of curiosity, what was your first job that you did at 14?
14, I was a busser at Good Times Cafe in my hometown. So it's this 50s diner. And I worked there every weekend bussing tables. I ended up cooking. I did some serving. At 14, I looked like I was like 11. I've always had a big So people were like, are you old enough to work here? And I was like, yep, I have a work permit. And then by the time I was 16, I was working full-time at Denny's as a server, 40 hours a week on top of going to high school. So I've always had this drive, and I've always had these jobs people thought I was way too young for, but I still went in and did them. So I was like, I can do this and get paid to help other people with their careers too and help them find jobs that they love.
Well, actually, it's funny. You remind me of a very good server. There's a local burger joint, and the guy always takes care of me. You just sound just like him, which is hilarious. Anybody who is listening and will know that. I just like dead ringer. So I just thought about that and said, you know what? Have you served before? Yeah, that sounds about right. So.
Yeah, and I think as I work with people too, people are like, oh, why do you list like working at Denny's on your resume or on your LinkedIn or talk about it? And I don't think people realize how transferable those skills as a server are. You're working in a super busy environment. You're working with a lot of difficult people, especially at Denny's at 3 a.m. No one comes in and they're happy and in a great mood at 3 a.m. at Denny's. So I think oftentimes people really undervalue the work that servers do, that our barista at Starbucks does. So I always highlight that because I'm like, if you want to do that for a career, that's awesome. I've met a lot of great customer service people who do that for a career. And if you want to switch careers, there's a bunch of amazing transferable skills. That's why I always make sure to highlight that, because people don't always realize how much knowledge it takes, experience dealing with people when they're hungry.
I'm not going to lie. Anybody who knows me, I'm the worst person to deal with if I haven't eaten. In that industry, I mean, you're paying attention to customized orders. You are listening to people that sometimes aren't very clear about what it is that they're asking for, that they want. And sometimes they forget. You're ordering a hamburger or something, and you didn't want pickles. It's your job to be a mind reader. But if, let's say, for example, you've waited on that table a couple of times or that person is familiar, you might just go ahead and do it without that person knowing. It's a seamless support system that just occurred. Growing up the ladder, so to speak, and applying those experiences to these other jobs that are applicable. I remember I actually worked at Old Navy. It was a Target store, and I think it was like 2005. The thing was, it was very difficult to stand out in that store because there was a lot of things going on. A Target store, you're not familiar, or just for listeners, is basically a store that's not doing too well. There's a lot of LP, loss prevention issues. It's just hemorrhaging money. There may not even be a set structure for management. So the funny thing is that I used to bounce around to different places, but my favorite place was the fitting room. People would think that that is kind of a weird place to be. And I go, other people are kind of back there drawing on the walls or not doing anything, And that's actually the biggest place for customer service, because not only do you have have a good vantage point of the store when it is quiet, as opposed to, let's say, a cashier that can literally only see line of sight from end of register clothing to bags that they're bagging. They're so busy they can't pay attention to other potential LP issues in the area. But you're keeping it clean. People don't want to come into a dirty fitting room. I would have always above and beyond experiences in there, and people constantly commenting about how clean it was and how meticulous it was. And you had visits, which I'm sure you're familiar with too, in your line of service. People would come in and I wouldn't even know. You would have these ecstatic assistant managers that come in and go, "You just had the DM come in and you gave them great customer service." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And they're like,
"Yeah.
What did you say to him?" I'm like, I don't know. Well, how do you not know? I'm like, because I don't know who the DM is. I just treated him like a customer. I thought that was kind of the whole point, right? Like, I'm not going to treat them any different. It was really shocking to see that surprised look on my assistant manager's face. So transferring that experience from where you were to where you are now. In your experience, what is the biggest oversight? Because I know you do coaching, you do different topics, finding the balance, leveraging LinkedIn. What's the biggest oversight that candidates or potential candidates has when it comes to just something as simple like a cover letter? What's your experience been on that?
I feel like people often are not putting themselves in the recruiters or the hiring manager's seat. They often say, okay, here's what I did, or here's my strengths or my skills or what I've done, but they don't think about the language that the hiring manager is using. So they may have worked at Facebook, for example, and then they're looking to go get a job at LinkedIn. Facebook and LinkedIn talk about two positions very differently. You could be a marketing manager at Facebook and then want to go be a marketing manager at LinkedIn, but the way that they talk about those two positions is very different. So I think it's key that people really get into the shoes of whoever is reading their cover letter or their resume or their LinkedIn and say, okay, what language do they use? What are they really looking for? What is important? What is not important? And highlight that. Oftentimes people just say, well, here's what I do every day. Let me put a laundry list. Oftentimes they don't care what you do. They care about the value you add, the results you bring. So I encourage people to say, okay, what does a recruiter or hiring manager care about? Second step, I want you to communicate your value and what the CEO and the shareholders of the company would care about. That's the why that you need to communicate. Not why, okay, Bob over in Tennessee is going to care, but why would the CEO and shareholders care about the work that you as the marketing manager at Facebook do every day? And if you can communicate that why, the recruiter or hiring manager is going to love that.
When you have this cover letter, is this something that you would recommend be simpler? Or is this something that you should really do? For example, we're speaking about, would you go into real specific details, or is it just kind of a short and sweet, hey, listen, this is what I do. This is how I'd be an asset to the company. I just feel that, even me personally, when I've gone and spoke with recruiters and different workforce agencies, they all have different answers. So I'm just curious as to what your personal experience has been. What seems to be a major just oversight every single time a candidate comes in, they have like the exact same.
I think after the length of resumes, cover letters are probably one of the most controversial topics when it comes to recruiting and hiring people. So I often find that with cover letters, it really depends on the company and the position. Some companies, they love cover letters, they're going to read it. Other companies don't care. I just posted something on LinkedIn yesterday saying, do you submit a cover letter or not? Every answer was different. Some people said, oh yes, of course. If you don't submit one, you're arrogant. Other people are like, no, why would you waste your time? So it really depends. So I think as the candidate, you have to again put yourself in the shoes of that recruiter or hiring manager and say, okay, why am I submitting a cover letter? What value am I going to bring to them? And what are they going to get out of reading my cover letter? Personally, with my clients, unless the position asks for a cover letter, I tell them to instead spend that 30 minutes or an hour networking. Rarely is someone going to bring you in saying, oh my God, your cover letter was amazing, because a lot of people don't read it. Instead, they're going to bring you in because they're like, John, Jill, Samantha, and Carrie recommended that I bring you in. I've had that happen with clients because they're networking hardcore, and all these people reach out to the hiring manager and provide references, or they have a phone call with the hiring manager. So I found the number of people who get interviews because of great networking is way higher than cover letters. So that's where I would focus the energy.
I agree with that. It's almost impossible sometimes to reach directly the hiring recruiter or manager for that company to do that very networking that needs to be done. But you're right. When you do have somebody that can vouch for you, it just makes it a lot lot easier. I did see that topic. I think I intentionally stayed out of it because as you saw, there were so many. I remember an older gentleman there was like, I can't remember a job that I didn't have a cover letter for. And I'm like, this is not a good place to do that. So, but it's true, and that's why I asked, because it's such a varying narrative and vantage point on that topic that got to be working with dozens of people on a monthly basis. What seems to be working and what doesn't, not just about what the good is, but also what's not and maybe what to avoid. But there's never a bad time to network. You should always be networking regardless.
I 100% agree. I think networking, most jobs are achieved by way of networking. It's helpful and necessary to network when you need a job, but it's also important to network when you don't need a job.
What steps do you actively take to maintain like a healthier work life and home life balance?
That's something I always struggle with, and I pay my therapist a lot of money to help me with that. Especially probably over the last few months, that's something I've been working on to balance more. My business, I just started doing it full-time about 8 months ago. Before that, I'd been doing it part-time for 3.5 years, but I quit my full-time job that included an apartment, furnished, paid for in San Francisco, to run caffeinatokyle.com full-time. So I was very nervous. So I was just working all the time, trying to get new clients, get more business, marketing, helping people. And it got to a point where I was just working all the time. And I was like, okay, I need to take a step back and set some better boundaries. So I've worked with my therapist to do that. For me, I need really strict boundaries. I don't operate well in the gray area. So some things that's consisted of is stop working at 9 p.m. I'm not a morning person, so I usually don't start till like 10 or 11 a.m. So I stopped working at 9 p.m., not allowing my laptop in the bedroom. I had a habit of sitting in my bed, working on projects till like 2 a.m. I don't do that anymore. And then my phone, I don't allow my phone in my bedroom at all. So that's probably been most dramatic because it's easy for me to hop on my phone, answer an email real quick, and then just get lost in hundreds and hundreds of emails. And that's just helped tremendously. And then something, I feel like everyone says this and it's everywhere, learning to say no. And at first I was like, okay, sure, I'll learn to say no. Before I didn't really need to say no a lot. My time was not so compressed with so many tasks and projects with clients. But now I'm getting nonstop inundated with people saying, okay, I want you to coach me, or hey, let's partner together, or hey, I have this service I can offer you, or hey, will you look at my resume for 5 minutes? Hey, will you hop on the phone? And learning to say no has been super helpful. And it's something I've just recently realized. And I wish I would have taken that advice from people. All the podcasts I listened to, all the articles I read, everyone that says learn to say no, eventually took like working 12, 15 hours a day to finally learn that saying no is what I need to do to sustain myself and be able to provide the best work product possible.
Again, you're talking to a graphic designer where everybody wants the thing that they're working on the next day. Telling you 6 p.m. the next day is a Saturday and they're not working. They're out on a golf course somewhere. So I hear you 100%. And I've burned the candle at both ends many times myself. I was working full-time overnights, working in a call center at one time, and then also doing full-time graphic design and video editing during the day. And I ended up in a hospital. You can't do that. Having 2 or 3 hours of sleep a day, that whole sleep when you're dead thing, I mean, it sounds good as a marketing tagline, but keep on that work method and you're going to end up in that situation very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think sleep too is something I've really come to value. I've always been someone who sleeps a lot and values their sleep, but it's something I've been even more focused on, making sure that in my bedroom, I'm only sleeping, nothing else, making sure I'm getting enough sleep. Something I've been trying to do is wake up without an alarm. My therapist says that's the best thing you can do for yourself. You don't want to start your day off being jolted up. And so I've been working to get to bed earlier so I can wake up without having 7 or 10 alarms that I need to wake me up. So I've been working to try and get to bed earlier and make sure I'm really practicing that sleep hygiene.
Yeah, and that's effective. I mean, personally, myself, I've developed panic attacks. I had to say, because you wake up in that panic of, oh, what's going on? What is that? Where am I? I'm late. And it's just you know that I'm going to have a heart attack feel. And it just, if you don't say no, it's your personal health. And you wear that stress. People don't understand how much. I mean, I've caught myself looking at my phone as I'm sitting down to try to eat dinner. My dinner gets ice cold. And I'll just have that one email or that phone call. And meanwhile, my food is 2 hours cold because I didn't say no. So I like that. I think we're going to highlight that a little bit more, saying no in the future for both of us.
Yeah.
So obviously you see a variety and quite the diversity of work talent cross paths. What are the type of conversations that you would have with the potential company or key indicators that you do feel out from their work culture atmosphere to see that if this is in fact a good fit for the potential talents that would be signing on with them?
For me, I always have the candidate reach out directly. So as a career coach, I'm always advocating for the candidate. But some of the questions I make sure that my candidates ask are about work-life blend, like we just talked about, self-care. What does the work environment look like? There's this great writer on LinkedIn called Laura Riley, and she has these amazing questions she always encourages people to ask. And one of them is like, how do you spend your lunch break? How do people there spend their lunch break? Shows you what the organizational culture is like. Are people just working tooth and nail all the time? Or is there some of that work-life blend? So I always encourage people when they're looking for jobs to ask those difficult questions. And it can be challenging to do that when you're looking for a job. You're like, okay, I just need any job. I'm going to take anything. But it's important for candidates to be interviewing companies just as much as the company is interviewing them. I mean, you're signing up for a job. You want to make sure you like it. Preferably you love it, but at least like it.
Absolutely. And I was talking to TJ about this in the last podcast as well. It's very much like a relationship. Like any relationship, it's about communication. We want to love what we do. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. We want to get paid well for what we do, but that's the whole point of doing that research is to see, hey, yes, I do want a job, but if you're going to the same type of jobs, why? When you are working with the candidates, what is the biggest turnaround that you've experienced from a candidate after working with them?
I've had this with a number of clients, but I can think of one specifically was confidence. A lot of people come to me and they lack confidence and they're like, oh, here's what I've done in the jobs I'm looking for. And I'm like, okay, you say on here you have this accomplishment of managing projects. Tell me more. And they're like, oh, I managed a few $1 million a year in projects. So I was like, oh my God, that's impressive. On here you just say you manage projects. Let's add some numbers. Let's highlight those accomplishments. People don't often feel like they can brag about everything they've done. And that's what I do a lot with people, is just confidence building and building up their morale and saying, no, you are amazing. You're fabulous. You're great. Here's all these things you've done. We have to make sure you believe in yourself before you go and try and sell yourself to a recruiter. They're not going to be sold on you until you're sold on yourself.
Man, I don't think you need a therapist at all. You should be therapists for other people, man.
Sometimes it feels like that. And I think sometimes people just need that. Someone to listen to them, someone to motivate them, and someone to tell them they're great. It can be hard for people to find it in themselves, but I believe everyone is great. And I believe everyone has that motivation. My job is just kind of help them find it within themselves.
Right. It's like finding your voice.
Exactly. Beautifully said.
Thank you. Now, for the workshops that you've done, and I've seen a lot of great praising reviews, are they just available in person or are they also accessible online?
So for the last few years, I've just been doing in-person workshops, but recently I've introduced some courses online. So I'm trying to kind of expand into this digital space. So I'm trying to do podcasts and all of that. I feel like sometimes I'm a bad millennial because I'm not always up to date on every single avenue that's out there.
Now, individuals can find that information though on caffeinatedkyle.com, right?
Yes, caffeinatedkyle.com is the best place.
Finally, as I always like to, I know there's so many stories that everybody has. If you could share with us one horror story and awesome story, something that is uplifting.
So I personally used to live in Seattle. I went there for grad school. And while I was there, I had this great job at Navos. And I did fundraising and marketing for them. And I loved the job. It was the best job ever. But my family's in California. So I left them to come to California, back to California to be with my family and also to pursue this amazing opportunity, or what I thought was an amazing opportunity. It was way more money. It was this great organization. Everyone there was amazing. They had already raised lots of money. I was going to come in and help them raise more money. And then I got there in my first week, I figured out every single item in my interview was a lie. My boss was only half time. Online, they published, we serve this number of clients every year. It was a lie. The CEO was literally like a dictator. Every single minute he wanted to know what you were doing. He needed to see your calendar. It was this horrible experience. Week one of being there, I knew I had made the wrong decision to come there. But by being back in the Bay Area, I was able to kind of network and stuff. And within a few weeks of being there, I was reached out by San Francisco State University saying, hey, we have this opening. We see you're back in San Francisco. Do you want to come back here? So it turned into this great opportunity. I would not have been reached out to had I not been in the Bay Area. I was there 8 weeks total. So those 8 weeks being there were horrible. I really hated it. I was not happy. But it turned into this great opportunity. Had I not taken it, I would not have been considered for San Francisco State, which was, again, one of the best jobs I've ever had. So I think sometimes when you're in the midst of things, it can look really horrible and suck. But afterwards, I feel like things often happen for a reason. And the reason I took that opportunity was to then be presented this other opportunity.
I like that. No, it definitely fits. I think it's important to share to people just what you're going through right now isn't necessarily the end. It can have a demoralizing effect, but just know that that is not it, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think that about wraps it up. You can find Kyle on LinkedIn and through his website at caffeinatedkyle.com. As a bonus, anyone who is listening to the podcast and is interested or in need of a great resume review, cover letter, coaching, or many of the other services that Kyle is available for, can actually send Kyle a screenshot of the podcast and mention the phrase "bring on the coffee" and schedule a consultation, and you'll receive 25% on your first coaching session with Kyle just by mentioning this podcast episode and phrase. Kyle, appreciate your time and thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have your own recruiter or candidate story that you want to share with us? If you're listening on YouTube, comment below. If you're listening on your podcast app of choice, feel free to email us at go@miketech.tv. You can also find our full conversation unedited on YouTube at youtube.com/MikeTech Studios. That's MIKTEK Studios. This podcast is available on iTunes, Google Play, or your podcast app of choice. Thanks for checking out this episode. This is Michael Midnight signing off. Thanks again, guys. Bye now.